UK's best, put a natural feeding to the test. From Scotland's Highlands to the coast of Dover, we are the raw feeders of Great Britain, yeah!
Good evening. So welcome to the Raw Feeds of Great Britain podcast. As you know, it's a brand new podcast and you're one of the very few people to come on the founding episode, so to speak. So can you start by telling me about who you are and why you've come onto the podcast today?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to be here. So my name is Bethany Bell and I'm the founder of the CDD Method, which is known as the Canine Dialogue Dynamics Method. And really what it is about thinking outside the box and coming outside of conventional. So it isn't the most conventional method, and it's not the most well known. It's relatively new. I came up with it in 2023 while I was really starting to change my viewpoints and my perspective in 2020. As a trainer and a conventional behaviorist, I was always force-free, but I was really just looking for more and went down a rabbit hole, and that's kind of what it turned into, was a different way of teaching dogs and not really focusing so much on the obedience side of things, really focusing on the dog's emotions, the dog's lived experience, and what do they need from us as much as what we need from them, really. So, and obviously diet comes into that as well. And, you know, as I'm sure you're close to, I suppose, is that everyone has these different perspectives of, everyone will tell you one thing and then another person will tell you a different thing. So I was kind of tangled in this web, and I was really just looking at, okay, well, let's look at some of the studies, let's look at the lived experience and let's combine them together, rather than just going, well, because this one study said this, then that's complete fact. So it's really combining the lived experience, what we see, what we can see with our dogs, what they see, and also what the studies show as well, and combine it all together. So it's a bit more holistic, but holistic in the actual sense of the word, which means looking at the entire picture, rather than just focusing on one area.
Yeah, to be honest with you, a lot of people do as well. They misinterpret that word as holistic to mean, for example, anti-farmer and things like that. But it's not. It just means stepping back, looking at the picture as a whole, and taking like tools from each place to help you on the way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, every single dog is an individual, and they're not all going to fall into what I call a textbook situation. And the more knowledge that you've got, the more tools that you're aware of and know how to use, the more it's going to help you. And this could be the absolute niche and the answer to everybody's problems if they've been struggling for so long and they've not tried this. So it's just something else, another tool to bring to the table, which I think is great. Because I've always said, I'm not a dog trainer. I know the very, very basics in terms of raising a puppy and getting them not to like wee and poo everywhere. But I'm not a trainer. I've not got the patience for it. It's a skill set. And if anything, what I've experienced is when I've tried to work with trainers in the past, it's more they're training me, not the dog. Do you know what I mean? Which makes sense, because I need to be trained as well. Not the dog's perfectly fine. Just I was struggling to communicate what I wanted with the dog, if that makes sense. So yeah, 100%, definitely not a dog trainer. So I'm totally at your mercy here with everything, because I'm learning with everybody who's going to watch as well, because I haven't got a clue. So yeah, as you go into things, I'll probably ask you questions for my own benefit as well. So I do apologise.
Please do.
But so, in respect of you've touched on it itself, but the words itself, they're not that explanatory, are they? So dialogue dynamics, what does that actually mean?
So it's about, well, I mean, the dynamics of dogs is something that we've been very coy about in the past. So we've actually, as an industry, kind of shut down the idea that dogs might be understanding language more than, just a few basic cued words. And it's the thought process that I came into the industry with. I came into the industry in 2010. So, I was an 18-year-old girl who'd just come into the industry. I was just fresh out of college, or just going into all these different college routes, really, to learn about animal behavior and care and everything. So everywhere said, don't talk to your dogs too much. Don't talk to your dogs. You're going to confuse them. It's going to become white noise. It's going to you're going to confuse them, and you just want everything to be clean cut, cued language. So all the language was really 1 to 2 syllable words. It was like 1 word or 2 word glued together, and it was very, very basic. So I used to run 11 classes a week. I was doing 11 dog training classes, puppy classes, all this, different types of classes. And I remember saying, like, don't talk to your dogs in between, just say the cued word once and wait it out, and then give them the cue and then give them the reward. So I was very much a conventional trainer up until, I would say, 2020, when I started to really think about what I thought I knew, and revisit some of the areas, because I had some issues with my own dogs. At the time I had 3 rescue dogs, and there were some in-house issues, and the current stuff that I knew as a behaviorist and as a trainer just wasn't cutting it. And I was like, okay, well, this is a shock. I really thought that, by about 2-3 years of working with my dogs in this way, we would have seen some proper progress, but we didn't. And so I was also, as I was working with a large percent of my clients, were getting so far with the cued language, and it just wasn't really going past it. So I just really stumbled across 2 things that changed my perspective. One was a study that showed that dogs could understand more language than we thought. So that study really stood out to me, and I was just like, okay, that blew my mind. But there was also a book that was by Alfie Kohn, I think it is, Alfie Kohn, and he wrote a book called Punished by Rewards, and that also changed my perspective. I didn't agree with every point he made, but a large majority of what he wrote about made sense to me and changed my perspective. So I started to use more dialogue. I started to use more language, and I slowly, after about 2 years, I would say between 2020 and 2022, I was just really stripping out my cued language and the training responses, and I'd really started to become something different than a trainer. And that's really where dialogue comes in. It was where I developed the 5 phases of dialogue, which takes us through how to teach our dogs language in a way they can understand. Obviously, they don't understand language in the exact same way as a human does. Obviously, we are going to be more advanced, but they certainly can understand more than just cued language. So that's where the dynamics came in. That's why it's so dynamic, is that we can use it in multiple different ways. That includes more teaching styles rather than training styles. And we're not really using it to focus on obedience and my dog should do this and they'll get something for it if they do it. Where we changed the perspective from is, well, does the dog need to do that? Is that actually how a dog should behave? Is that normal dog behavior, or are we telling them or training them to act like not a dog? So that's really where it comes in. It's that dynamic way of using our dialogue in a way they can understand, but also understanding their dialogue as well, understanding their body language and their vocalizations, and understanding what they're communicating is a huge part of it too.
Yes, see, when you say stuff like that, because I've noticed something a few months ago now. It's about August last year. Obviously, I live in Eastbourne on the south coast, and the
Oh, lovely.
beachheads of the South Downs, which are, say, 20 minutes on a bus away. And I took her onto the bus, and she's normally fine on buses, but this is the first time I did it during the school run time. So the bus was really busy, and I could tell straight away her body language changed. She was sniffing everyone. Her ears were pinned back. She was literally looking everywhere, and she was salivating at the mouth. I was like, 2 stops after I got off, I walked the rest of the way, and that would turn into a 45-minute walk. I'd rather have took the walk than make her sit through that and not be in a environment she didn't want to be in. Because if that had continued and she felt a bit more like threatened, so to speak, with all the people coming on, she could have lunged. She could have reacted in a small environment. And I didn't want that, especially with kids. So I took her off to keep her safe, and obviously to keep others safe as well. Because dogs can be unpredictable in situations you never had them in before, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's how I find it anyway with her.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sensible, and it's saving her from going through distress that she didn't need to be in. And well done for recognizing it as well, because when you're in a position where we're putting a dog in a situation they haven't been in before, and perhaps it is busier than we realized it was going to be, a lot of people do feel this pressure to persevere with the plan. It's like, okay, we've set out to do this, and we're going to do socialization, and we're going to take our dog here, and we're going to do XYZ, and then the dog doesn't cope. And a lot of people think, well, we're here now and we've set out to this goal and this is what we've got to achieve, otherwise we're never going to achieve it. And people want to get to from A to B and mark off all these achievements and tick off all the boxes, like, okay, we've done this and this, and my dog saw this and my dog did this. And actually, when we slow things down, just as you've just demonstrated, slowing it down and going, actually, is this worth the risk? Is this worth the putting my dog in a state where the emotions are going to get the better of the dog? Because this is where it makes a huge difference when we step in and go, okay, I can see my dog's not coping, and it's not worth persevering just so we can say we did it or tick off the boxes or put our dogs through that experience, but actually understand, well, we can do this another time when the dog's feeling a bit more brave in that situation, when the dog is feeling emotionally regulated, when it's quieter, and when it's not brand new to her. We can introduce those things to dogs from a slower pace, where it's not, okay, we're going to just throw you in the deep end and see how we cope. So it was good that you recognized it and came out of that situation.
Yeah, that's what it was just the first. Like I said, I've been on many buses with her, and she's been absolutely fine and gold, not a problem. And just this one time, because I saw a lot more people on there, and younger children, which have got more energy, which they can
Yeah.
read like anything else. It was just too much for her, and I could tell. So I just took her off, because I don't know. But I do see people, like I said, not like virtue signal or anything, but I do see people doing exactly what you said, trying to persist or cause, and they'll just keep stroking them to try and settle them. But it's like, hang on, prevention is better than a cure. Just get them out of the situation first.
Yeah.
Because it took her a good, say, 5 minutes before she shook it all off. She was still a bit anxious when she got off the bus. Um, but yeah, I say that like I know that's what dogs do. I've just noticed when after she does get a little bit anxious, she does shake off.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's anything to that or not. But yeah,
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, dogs. I mean, this is again another slightly controversial point to make with it, but yes, dogs definitely do tend to shake it off, and that's something that I've seen many times after a dog. Not necessarily stress. It can just be when the dog was heightened, and they just shake it off like, "Oh, let's just reset that," and they're not thinking
yeah,
about doing it. It's an automatic process that's happening. But where people kind of get it slightly off is where they try to cue it, and people want to cue the shake off. So they're like, that's it, shake off. And they tell the dog, okay, something stressful happened. So now you should cue the word shake off and then cue the behavior and then mark and reward it. But actually what that's doing is teaching a dog to do it without the internal process of it. It's actually a performance. They're actually more performing the shake off rather than authentically shake off. So it actually doesn't achieve what people are trying to get trying to make happen. What it's actually doing is teaching the dog just to perform the behavior and get the reward to do it. Whereas I would just leave it as an authentic shake off, let the dog deal with it, and then just say, oh yeah, you shook it off, that's fine. Was that a nice shake off? And you can give that kind of acknowledgement, but I wouldn't try to cue it and then turn it into a training session.
yeah, that makes sense. Because I see that as the equivalent of making yourself laugh. It's not the
Yeah,
same as a genuine laugh, is it? It doesn't
absolutely.
affect you the same way. So yeah, that makes sense when you said that. Um, but yeah, I see a lot of people, like I said, it's not like just like you said before, the canine nutrition side of it as well. It's exactly the same. Everyone's got their way of doing things and this, that, and the other. But in the canine nutrition world, there's no like there's no wrong way to do it really. Like every single feeding model out there is absolutely fine. No commercial pet food in the world is aimed to kill your dog or
Yeah,
poison your dog. So that's people can bicker about it, that's absolutely fine. But in the training world, I find it's very, very different because doing it wrong has a more of a immediate consequence, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
With nutrition, you can make tweaks over time and to get it right and evolve. But if you do the wrong thing, like on a training side of it, it can have an immediate consequence. So I think there's, like I said, depending on what information people are getting from, it's going to have a serious impact on their dog as an individual. Because just because, say, somebody, like you said, somebody's written a book and you can take insight from that book, but you might not agree with every single thing in it. But if somebody then also reads the same book and takes it as gospel and tries to apply the same thing to their own dog, it might not work. And then straight away they're going to think, oh, that method doesn't work at all. Do you know what I mean? Rather than looking at the whole picture. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's, and I always say it to people, like, you don't have to feel that you only can use CDD. I always say, if people like training and the dog actually genuinely enjoys the training and it's ethical and relationship-based training, because relationship-based training is very, very different from robotic training and over conditioning and over managing. That's a very different picture that we're looking at. So with CDD, I always say, well, look, if your dog enjoys training and as long as we're not putting it at the forefront and training every aspect of the dog's life, and the dog still gets to just be a dog and just gets to live a normal life and not everything has to be a performance, then pairing it with training and using certain situations where actually I think, look, training is going to be better in this situation than using CDD. There are certainly, and I think this is something that as an industry as a whole, in the dog industry, I'd like people to come away from that. We have to know everything and we have to be an expert in every single aspect. There are certain things that I'm not an expert in. There are certain situations that CDD wouldn't actually be the best fit for certain dogs. So for example, when it comes to anything that would involve precision. So if you need your dog to, if you're going to train sports and you're doing it competitively, then CDD probably isn't going to be the best fit, because we don't do it for precision. We don't do it the performance side of it. So I would say, well, okay, look, training's going to be better for this particular situation, because the way that we do things is like we wait for the dog, we let them make the choices, we let them decide, we try not to worry too much about the performance side. The dog doesn't need to perform for us. But then there are certain situations where, we actually do need a little bit of performance for competitive sport, for assistant dog training, that kind of thing. So it's knowing when we can kind of go, okay, it's not the be all end all. I'm not like you have to use CDD like a religion. It really is, okay, look, use the bits that work for you and your dog, and look for other ethical sources where there's plenty other professionals that do things amazingly, and they use they have amazing work and they're sharing that. So there's a whole picture where it becomes really the terminology I like is holistic. That is the actual holistic approach, is, well, I go for this, this person specializes in that area and this other person specializes in that other area. And I imagine that's the same with diets. There are diets that you might need to change for certain medical conditions, certain lifestyles, that kind of, and certain breeds as well. I suppose you can tailor that so that it matches the dog that's actually in front of us.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, even like you say, just touched on like sport and gun dogs that they need to have a function, or they need to have fast burning energy. Then you might, carbohydrates are going to be their best friend. It's fast burning energy for them. But it's like I say, it's apples and oranges. Do you know what I mean? It depends what the purpose is, and that's how you like tell the diet, but the training as well. It's no different. But what I like about your approach, it just reminded me of being back in primary school on sports day. Like, it's not the winning, it's the taking part that counts. That type of relaxed attitude. You know what I mean? Rather than getting to overperform and then like punishing them for not winning, or do you know what I mean, not succeeding. It's giving it a go and understanding how they might be feeling if you're going too over the top with it. Like you get to see some parents are with the kids, if that makes sense. So yeah, I do like that approach, and it suits me to a T, because I'm not the best trainer, and I like that because it's a bit more relaxed, if that makes sense. It's like, oh yeah, it's all right. She don't sit. No, it's because she don't want to, and that's okay. That's just because I can't teach her how. Do you know what I mean?
But that's okay. And you know, that it's funny you said that, you know, with the reminding you of primary school, because a lot of what I do and the whole really where CDD started from again came from the principles from Alfie Kohn, and I can never remember if I pronounce his name right. I can't tell if it's Kohn or Con, but he writes a lot about, and actually the book has absolutely nothing to do with dogs. The book is not based on dog training or dogs or at all. It's very human based, and it's very much based on looking at research that was conducted right from the 60s, really. And it's not, I mean, it's not a new book. It was written in the 90s, based on research that was being done from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and onwards. And there are lots of updates from that because he's still going. He's still talking about the research, and really, the whole premise of the book is coming outside of behaviorism, and going, well, look, behaviorism certainly has a place, and it certainly has served a purpose, but it's not the only way of looking, not the only worldview of looking at how we teach and how we, you know, teach children and how we run workplaces, and, you know, making it kind of all about rewards or punishments. And so that's kind of what drew me into that. And then I based it and extracted the parts that I could make relevant for dogs. And that's really where it came from. It was like, actually, do we need a dog to sit? Now, the majority of the time, we don't. Dogs don't really, I mean, some dogs will, you know, naturally just plonk their bottom on the ground and sit down, but a lot of them don't. And a lot of them just don't really, it's not a natural position for them. And then when we look at what that does, you know, with the repetition of sits, and we look at, okay, some of the sits are very strict and the dog has to be in a very controlled position. So they have to tuck their hips in and tuck everything in as they sit down. And that's kind of more competitive obedience style. But when we look at what that does to the dog's joints, is not good. And there's been a lot of professionals that have come out and said, yeah, you know what, we don't need that. And that's not actually very good for the dog. So dogs can sit perfectly fine in their own way, and some dogs will spend their entire life either standing or laying down, and that's perfectly fine as well. And obviously that differs between breeds, it differs between individuals, but it's really looking and going, well, do we need a lot of this to be trained? Do we need obedience in the way that we've structured it? And when you look at how old obedience is, we're looking at over 100 years old, and yes, we've chopped it up and changed it and extracted certain parts of it and changed the delivery and the way we do things, you know, and particularly in the force-free realm, but the premise of it is the same. Do we need to teach a dog to lie down in a military style? Probably not. You know, unless we're going into training a dog in a military, then yeah, okay, those things, that's where it stemmed from. Those are where it's more relevant. But people that just live their lives with their dogs and see their dogs as their family members, as they should, don't really need a lot of it. They don't need their dogs to have this kind of strict obedience. And so I was really looking at, okay, well, look, that's performance based. We don't need that. You know, one of the things that I used to say, because I was repeating what I'd heard and I was repeating from my own training, was, okay, but we teach a dog, or we train a dog to lie down so that we can get them to settle. And then I started to come to the conclusion that dogs don't need to lie down to settle. In fact, dogs settle isn't a posture. Settle isn't a trained behavior. It's not something you can train. Settle is a natural emotion. It's a natural feeling. It's a state of mind. And so a dog can be settled and walking. A dog can be settled and standing. A dog can be settled and exploring. They don't necessarily have to lay on their bed in a kind of a very frozen position in order to feel settled. In fact, that usually does the opposite and actually makes them feel quite unsettled. So that's kind of where I flip things around on their head, and I'm like, well, actually, instead of just accepting things because this is the way things are done, which was what I did for the first 10 years of my career, I just accepted it as this is what we do. Why would we even question it? I started to question everything. I was like, no, nothing is going to be unquestioned. Everything's going to go through this kind of very strict amount of questioning that I've set up for myself, so that, you know, if it's a good theory, if it's something that actually works, then it can stand questioning. And if it can't stand questioning and it falls apart, then it's not good. So that's kind of the way I deciphered what was going to remain and what was going to fall away from CDD.
That makes a lot of sense. Because I don't know if you like I say, when it comes down to like so pets in general, the whole everything has become about convenience
Mm.
across the board. Whether that's through training, people wanting quick wins and quick fixes, or through the nutritional side, but it's about forcing a dog to fit around our lifestyle rather than the other way around. So
Yeah,
if you, which is why it's so important to get a breed that matches your lifestyle, because if you're trying to match, for example, if I got a Belgian Malinois now, not a chance would I be able to cope with that breed in the lifestyle that I'm in, and I
yeah,
wouldn't even be able to force that dog to do that either, because it's just going to be a massive clash. Dog would be miserable even if it was obedient enough to listen. It's just not just it suppresses itself. It can't be itself, if that makes sense. It has to be a
yeah.
shadow of itself, and I don't think that's fair, personally. And that's why I do think people should research what dogs they're getting, and not just get ones that are trending that look good in photos.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, this is such a problem that I'm up against, as many professionals are up against when people come to us with, you know, they've got themselves quite a difficult breed, and then the breed is now displaying their breed traits, and they're like, well, I want to train this away. This is a problem. And you're like, well, but that's what they're bred to do. And it doesn't mean that we allow them to go into stress, but they're going to have to give them an outlet for that behavior. And I think that we just haven't got enough emphasis on people researching the breed before they go and get it, and I think that's a big mistake. And and not just the breed but also the breeder. And if you're rescuing, like I've always rescued dogs, but that's not easy. That's not a walk in the park either. You have to know, you know, is the rescue centre actually, you know, legit? There's a lot of dodgy ones out there at the moment. That's a big problem. That's kind of wrapped up in a security of emotions of, well, it's a rescue dog, so obviously they're doing a good thing, and many of them are, but there are also some that are, you know, puppy farmers in disguise or funding the puppy farms. There's a
Yeah,
big undercover thing. And so I think we do need to know, and we do have to be realistic about, look, there's a million breeds. I know there's not a million breeds, but there's so many breeds that I would love to have, so many. And I really fell in love with the big dogs. I fell in love with Newfoundlands. I fell in love with Huskies. I love how noisy they are. I love how the sassiness of them. They've got a lot of attitude. I love that, because I don't want a well-behaved dog. I don't want a dog that's perfect. I want a dog that kind of goes, I don't want to do that, or, you know, gives you a bit of cheekiness. I love that in a dog. And and I do think Huskies and Malamutes really show that very well. But I don't have currently the lifestyle that would accommodate that dog. And so it wouldn't be fair for me to take on a Newfoundland, or a Husky or a Malamute, because I don't have that kind of lifestyle where I can give them the exercise that they need. I can give them the time that they need. So I've had to just say, well, look, maybe at another time in my life, when, you know, everything isn't quite so work based, maybe then that's the time. I'm not saying I'll never get one, but we put it off until, you know, things actually work to accommodate that breed. And you said it perfectly before, is it we seem to think it's all about getting the dog to train them regardless of the breed, regardless of the individual. We then want to train them to fit around our lifestyle perfectly, and that's where problems start, because we're talking about an actual individual with their own emotions, with their own individualities, their own preferences, and we can't always fit that. We kind of build up this picture in our head of this perfect dog and what it's going to be like, and then the reality of that is it's usually not the actual reality, that the kind of fantasy we built. And I think personally a lot of it is better when we stop going against the grain, when we stop fighting our dogs to try to fit in a mold that we created for them. When we actually let go of that mold and we start to go, well, look, let's just see what this dog is like if we took away those restrictions, the unnecessary ones. we actually find that the picture is so much deeper, it's so much clearer, and you build a better relationship with your dog, and you build a much better, much stronger bond. And that to me is worth so much more than the lifestyle you thought you were going to have. Usually it works out even better than what we'd originally planned, but it does mean we have to sometimes sacrifice that picture perfect thing, like okay, we're going to take our dogs everywhere, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Some dogs just are not suited to that type of lifestyle.
No, definitely not. But have you ever, in your experience, have you ever had a dog that's gone against the grain? So they don't show any of their own breed traits, but they show traits of other dogs. And I'm going to give my Maggie as an example here, because she's half Rottie and she's half some a mixed breed bully. Anyway, I ain't got a clue what her mother was, but a bully type. But given the mix of what she is, you'd think she'd be a little bit vocal. Like I said, Rotties are famous for the grumbles and things like
Yes.
that. I think she's mute. She's never barked. She doesn't guard. If somebody walked in here right now, she'd go for a walk with them. She's got no loyalties at all.
Yeah.
And she herds. She thinks she's a border collie. She's the strangest dog I've ever met. I love her, but she's not the dog or the breed that I went for in herself.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's actually a good thing, because I'm thinking, well, imagine if she was barking all the time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That might start to take its toll. But yeah, I generally think she's a mute dog. She's never barked.
Bless her. And that absolutely does happen within the breed. So we generalize with breed traits. We kind of go, well, the majority of breeds do this, and we can usually tie it back, if especially with more ancient breeds, we can always tie it back. Well, look, they were bred for this, this, and this. So we can make sense of the behavior that they're displaying. But there are always exceptions. There are always those that do sit outside the box and go, well, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. No, I'm and I've worked with collies that are not bothered by sheep. They can't be bothered. Just like, and they'll call them like the failed sheepdog, because they're just like, no, or they'll make friends with the sheep and they're like, well, I don't want to herd them. I just kind of like them. I've worked with collies that their arousal level spiked so high around sheep they couldn't be near them, and actually some collies that have killed sheep because they just couldn't cope around them. So there's always the exceptions, and yeah, there's a lot of like bully breeds that don't display the kind of bully behavior that we're quite used to. I mean, generally most of them are soppy anyway, and I grew up with bulldogs, so the bulldogs are they're almost not the most dog-like dog ever. They make me laugh, because it's particularly British bulldogs, they're just not very dog-like. So you kind of go, I feel like they're their own species in themselves, especially when we look at English bulldogs and Frenchies and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there are within the breed traits, we have individual personality. So what you're seeing is her personality, and that does it's its own separate thing to breed traits. So personalities that, I'm just more of a quiet, laid back dog, and then we have personalities that are much hyper, much more crazy, a bit more aloof, and that all comes down to the individual personalities as well. It sounds like she's just quite a chilled, easygoing personality, and maybe a little bit more on the sensitive side. And so you kind of look at all of these breed traits, and you look at the individual personality traits, and it's all like an ingredients, really. It's a mix of ingredients that make up each individual dog. So yeah, breed traits are definitely useful to know and go, okay, well, there's a good chance that the breed is going to show their breed traits, and usually it's not straight away. Usually we see that from 9 months old, it's roughly. We see the breed traits really coming through during adolescence, but not early adolescence. So that's worth bearing in mind too. But also the individual personality, because yeah, I know lots of people that actually got a breed to so they could use that breed for what they're bred for, and they turned out to not be very good at it, and they didn't want to do it. And it was like, what's wrong? My dog's broken. And it's like, no, your dog is actually just showing their individual personality. And I think that's, for me, really important. I think individual personality is always overlooked with dogs, and we need to be able to embrace their personality rather than constantly going, how do I change my dog's personality? How do I make them into something they're not? And actually, sometimes there's a real beauty in accepting your dog for who they are. And obviously, that doesn't mean if they have behavioral issues and they're not functioning properly, then we don't do anything, we give up. Obviously, we need to make sure that they go from dysfunctional to more functional. We don't want any stress involved. We don't want the dog to be suffering. But when it comes to, when we sit outside of that and we just see a dog that is a little bit more like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm my own dog and I know what I want and I make my own decisions. That's actually what I like to strive for, to get more dogs that are able to do that, who can just say, yeah, I don't want to do that today, and have the ability to say no. We don't usually give the dogs enough chance to just say no. Obviously not in emergency situations. I'm talking within the realms of safety. That we do want dogs to be able to say no. We do want dogs to be able to go, yeah, that's just not me. I just don't want to do that.
Yeah, she's been the biggest learning curve ever, because she trains me. So I'm not everybody's a fan of it, but because I've got bad shoulders, I like my ball launcher, and when I throw it far, she'll go and get it, but then she won't give it me back. I'll have to go and get it off her.
Yeah.
But if I don't throw it as far, she'll give it me back, because she's like, yeah, don't throw it that far, because otherwise I'm not going to go and get it. That's too far. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she'll play if I don't throw it that far. And I just think that's really funny, because she's training me to how she wants to play it. If that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And they have their own play styles. And I know there's with balls, I don't have a problem with people using balls. It's just doing it sensibly. Don't launch a ball thrower for an hour, at a time, and just go back and forth. As long as it's always just being sensible and using common sense. I think that's the biggest thing. And one of my dogs is very ball obsessed, came to me ball obsessed, and actually removing the ball from him caused him more distress, and it was a comfort for him to have. So he takes his ball on a walk, and we'll do a few little throws here and there, and then we'll do some rolls, and then it's like, okay, now you've had enough, you carry the ball, and we mix it up so it's not tearing up his joints. But I don't think there's any harm in actually sensibly allowing a dog to have some ball play. But my other spaniel, who is not ball obsessed, has definitely does what your girl does, and he definitely taught me his play style with it. He doesn't like going too far with the ball. He's actually a fairly, what I would describe as a lazy spaniel. He's definitely like, well, I'll go that far, but I'm not going that far. Whereas my other spaniel, who is, definitely his physique is different, and you can definitely tell he was more of a sporty dog. He will go on and far, and you have to watch him to make sure he's not overdoing it. But my other spaniel's like, oh, there's no risk of me overdoing it. And then he taught me that he just wants to roll the ball, even if it's just a few centimeters, and now he'll nudge the ball towards me and I'll nudge it back with my hand. And he loves that style of it. He doesn't really love chasing it too much. And then, like I say, if he does, he'll get to it and he'll go, well, I'm not going to leave it there. I'm not going to bother picking it up and bringing it back. That's just not his style. He doesn't like repetition. So yeah, it's interesting how they can teach us their personal style of doing things.
Yeah, it is funny, and they're clever as well. It's like she'll, like say, if I'm walking a certain direction and I say throw the ball ahead of me, she'll go and get it, but then she'll wait because she knows I'm walking that way anyway. So why is she going to run back?
Yeah,
I'm going to her. Do you know what I mean? She's a lazy mute dog. She's just like me. She's just me.
Well, we do say that our dogs are like owners and everything, and I do think there's an element of truth to that. Obviously not always, but yeah, I think there is something that we can just I don't know if it's like complement each other when we understand our dogs. That's kind of what naturally forms. And, you know, there are, like you were saying earlier, just to pick back up on that is, I've certainly seen dogs that have displayed breed traits that they were not bred to do. In fact, my first dog, my golden retriever, used to round people up, and he did not like it. So as a family, if the family, you know, went for a walk and then they went in 3 different directions, he would go up, run up, and just repeatedly go up and round everyone up and keep an eye on and just go round and round and finding people, not in a retrievery way, but certainly in a more sheepdog way. So that was really interesting to grow up with, because he was my first dog. We got him when I was 10, and yeah, he was definitely very retrievery, but also had this additional rounding up, herding behavior that he developed over time.
So, dogs are just crazy. You think you know them, and then you learn something new every single day.
Yeah.
So let's just obviously touch it back onto the CDD. So have you got an example of where it has worked, but then it's like conventional methods haven't? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I mean, in many ways, it works. I mean, it works for all dogs, but there are certain issues that it can work very well with, particularly for reactivity, because that was really what it stemmed from. It was the fact that the reactivity wasn't getting better, and I could see that the conventional way of doing it, which I was trained to do, just wasn't getting anywhere. And so it was more than the conventional way. I mean, there's loads of different flavors of, you know, dealing with reactivity, and I'm only going to be able to skim otherwise because it takes hours to explain. But it's usually in a force-free way of doing it is, you know, through counter conditioning and desensitization, and that's just been the way that it's been done for decades, and it's very much about teaching the dog or training the dog to do something different. So it might be looking away from the trigger. There's the game, disengage, engage, and getting the dog really to just perform behaviors that are what we would deem as more appropriate or more beneficial behaviors than the reaction themselves. But what I learned and what I started to discover was what was happening with the dogs around me, and what I could see was happening to other dogs and my own, was that we were getting them to perform the behavior, but we weren't getting them to change their emotions, even though that was the goal. The goal was, okay, if we just pair it with positive reinforcement, then the dog will start feeling better around their triggers. And actually, on paper, it sounds great. And I very much bought into that for 10 years. But that was just a bit too simplistic on its own, and it didn't actually work for all dogs. I'm sure there have been many dogs that it did work for. I'm not denying that. But it certainly wasn't cutting it. So I was like, okay, well, then we need to come from a completely different perspective. And that's why I came outside of behaviorism, and I came outside of using desensitization and counter conditioning, and accept that counter conditioning works in the background as its own thing, but I don't extract the conditioning and highlight everything I do through that. So what I do instead is teach through language, and I teach through teaching dogs very simple sentences and giving them choices as well through the whole process. Obviously, it's not going to immediately change overnight, so it does still take a little bit of time, but it's about teaching the dog that actually you don't have to go any closer. You don't have to get closer if you don't want to. We can turn back. We can go in a different way. I help dogs through emotional regulation and impulse control, which are both things that happen internally within the nervous system rather than something we externally train. So it actually looks a lot different. It looks like communication from both end, two-way communication, because I'll say something to the dog and the dog has learnt it. So the dog then responds back to me in their own way. So I know what the dog is saying. I know what the decision the dog is making, and we teach them how to make their own choices within the realms of safety, obviously. So because I know people here, okay, you give the dog choices. Well, my dog would choose to go up and rip another dog up. And actually, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we don't give them the opportunity to make dangerous choices. We build up small, safe, easy choices, and then we start expanding that as the dog starts to feel the ability to make more choices. Because actually, if the dog hasn't learned how to make choices and we just throw loads of choices at them, that can actually be very stressful. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you just can't make a decision, and it actually makes you feel very stressed. So you're like, I just want someone else to make the decision for me, that just someone else choose. So we don't want to put them in that situation. So we teach them through true confidence building, which is working with the dog's individual personality, which is working with their own choices, and giving them a voice, giving them more autonomy. So we start talking them through the situation that they find themselves in. So when it comes to working through emotions like anxiety and fear, and looking at other things, other emotions that are in the mix, we're actually going, well, actually, if we can talk a dog through those emotions and to go, okay, look, you're fine. We don't have to go that. We talk about what the trigger is rather than pretending the trigger doesn't exist. So we give the trigger a name. We give the trigger an identity. It's like, okay, look, you're scared of the bin. That's just a bin over there. Nothing to worry about. You can have a look if you want. And if the dog's too scared, then we don't do it. So we work with their emotions and their current ability at the time. So it's actually working with them in the moment without training them to do anything specific. They don't have to do anything specific. I'm led by the dogs. And so I don't want to lead them in a way that I might think, okay, well, look, the dog's performing and doing something for the treat, therefore they're okay. Well, we know that's not true, because a dog can still perform for a treat and still internally feel really, really scared. So they can almost, disguise how they feel in order to get something that they want. So that's actually not how I want to work with dogs.
Yeah, it crosses over to a bit like with kids as well.
Yeah.
Because if my kids don't want to do something, that might be like a bit like a fear of doing. For example, going into the sea for the first time, and then they do it, and they come back. It could be it's that overwhelming for them to start crying,
Yeah.
even though they've done it. But that just shows that, yeah, they've done what I wanted them to do. But then the aftermath of that was the emotional toil of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So now I was just a bit like, well, then that then I get filled with guilt then. So hang on, do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
a bit of a bad dad moment. But yeah, it's quite similar to that, and that's why, like I say, if you apply the similar logic to, if you won't force your kids to do something, don't do it to your dog. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah, and I love that motto, and that makes complete sense. And it's the overlap is really, because I did look and I encourage everyone to read the book Punished by Rewards, particularly for parenting. It's I mean, I can't speak from experience. I'm not a parent, but I can definitely say that with parenting and things like that, you can learn a lot from that. You don't have to agree with everything that's in it, but as a principle, you will learn something. And it's really interesting to see the use of punishment and reward with children, because that's what the whole book is on. These studies that were done, through schools and through adults as well. It's not all just about children. It's about, workplaces and things like that, and how the promise of the reward actually ends up really squashing the internal motivation. And so everyone's kind of more relying on this external motivation. And that's where it came into this idea of gamifying everything. Everything turned into gamify this, earn your rewards, earn your stars, get your promotion, get this. And you're always promised more and more and more. But actually, the studies they did, particularly on children, showed that if they found a child was doing something, let's say they enjoyed drawing a picture, and they were like exploring with their art, and so they're drawing all these different things, and then the teacher came and said, well, look, if you keep drawing, I'm going to give you something at the end. You'll get a packet of sweets at the end if you keep drawing me some nice pictures. And so the children started drawing more and more and more to get the reward. But then when they started to remove the reward, and they said, okay, go back to just drawing, how you were before we introduced the reward, none of them went back to drawing again. and they didn't want to do it anymore, and it actually squashed that internal motivation. And so which I think that intrinsic motivation is something that we work with CDD. That's what we're honing in on, rather than the external reward of, okay, look, you did this, that's great, now you're going to get something for it. Whereas the actual thing they're doing and enjoying is the reward, because that's the intrinsic motivation. That's actually what they're enjoying doing, rather than doing it because they're going to get a reward. And there's a big difference. So whether we're talking about children or dogs, or people in the workplace and families and schools, that principle pretty much runs through all of it. We find behaviorism everywhere, and there's different ways of flavoring it, but the principle's the same. And so it's really interesting to see how, when we extract those different principles outside of behaviorism, we see what else there is. And that's where neuroscience comes in, and that's where we look at other ways of teaching and other ways of exploring the mind, which has been fascinating.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting, because, like you say, then it makes something like feel more of a chore as well.
Yeah.
So it's like when I used to work in like a call center environment, and I was constantly making calls and incentivized to do X amount of calls in a day and things like that. Even now, I hate phoning people. Somebody will ring me, I'll watch it, I'll just message them what's up, because I hate talking on the phone. Because I'm not getting paid to speak on the phone, so leave me alone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's kind of a similar thing, and it's like I said, never makes business and pleasure for the similar reasons. As soon as your pleasure starts becoming incentivized and work-like, you lose the pleasure of it, if that makes sense. So that's exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I get that, and like I said, it applies all throughout life, and it makes sense how it does actually work with dogs. So that's definitely food for thought for me, because yeah, now you've said it the way you've said it, it's crystal clear, and I understand it more.
Oh,
Like I said,
brilliant.
but when I heard like I said, the CDD at first, I was a bit like, friggin' hell's that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of reading, but the way you've just broken it down is like a layman's terms for people like me. It works, and it's. Do you know what? I'm going to put it into practice and dig a little bit deeper on this, and stop judging myself so much for not being a good dog trainer either, because I'm
Yeah.
just going to give myself a break.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we all have our strengths, and and I just don't think, I wouldn't class myself as a dog trainer anymore. I don't think that's the right term for me, because I don't train dogs anymore. But I loved training for a long time, and then I just came out of it, and I realized how stressed I was, always on the go, always train, and you do put yourself under a lot of pressure in a training environment. I think actually a lot of trainers don't realize how stressed they are in that environment, because there's so many things there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of judgment as well, like, oh, you didn't mark at that time, or you did that wrong. And so a lot of people do a lot of, I don't know why, but the environment does tend to be kind of ripping people apart. Not There's always some nice spaces though where that doesn't happen. But the second I came out of it, and I took a breath, and it was actually through lockdown really that sort of stemmed it, because I was rushed off my feet before lockdown, and then lockdown happened, and I was actually relieved, because it was like, well, you can't work anymore. You're going to have to do something else. And that was really weird for me, to just not train. It was very, very strange. And then I still trained for another 2 years afterwards, but it was slowly starting to evolve into something completely different. And so I actually think that what I do is more like parenting. It's a bit more like natural teaching. It's a bit more relaxed, which suits my personality a bit better, because I'm not an all on the go person. I'm not like, right, I'm not good at rushing. I'm not good at working under pressure. I hate working under pressure. I know lots of people go, I love working under pressure. I get my best work done. Well, that's not me. I will melt. I'll have a complete meltdown, and then it won't get done, and then I'll just give up. So it matches the way that my lifestyle is a lot better, where it's not, why should I expect my dogs to be perfectly trained, obedient, animals when I'm not obedient. I'm not an obedient person at all. Only within the law, but I'm kind of more of a person that would naturally get a bit of pushback. Like if someone said, "Well, could you need to do that?" Then I'll go, "Well, why?" That's like my natural. I have that natural question in me where I can't just. I need to know everything. I need to know why you want me to do that. I need to know why I can't do this. And so it was when I started to think, well, I'm expecting my dogs to be something that I can't even be. I'm expecting my dogs to just conform when I'm the last person to conform to things. So it was a real wake up call. And actually, I don't, when a lot of my clients actually came away from training themselves, they were like, I just feel like a weight's been lifted. I don't have to train anymore. I don't have to try and be a trainer. And it's like, no, you don't have to be your dog's trainer. You don't. If it's not something you want, then you don't have to do it. There are lots of other ways you can just live with your dog, and your dog isn't going to turn into an aggressive hooligan if they don't have training. As long as you're giving them guidance and teaching them, because teaching is different from training, and a lot of people use it interchangeably, but there's a big difference between teaching and training, and I talk about that a lot. But you can definitely do it in a more relaxed way. You don't have to set an hour a day to train your dog, or take them to loads of classes. If it's something your dog enjoys and you enjoy, then carry on. But yeah, not every person and every dog enjoys it.
Well, that's music to my ears, because yeah, I don't enjoy it. And I know there's many people that won't enjoy it either, but they think that it's like a societal norm. We've got to do it, but you just give us a get out clause. So thank you for that.
You're more than welcome.
Right. Well, I've taken up a lot of your time anyway, so I'm going to say bye bye for now. But when you release something else, like a new book or anything like that, come back on and promote the hell out of it, because I'd love to have you back on it and chinwag some more.
Oh, I have some books in the background that are being made. So hopefully this year there will be at least one more book. But I have got other books. I've got about 3 or 4 on the go. So hopefully one will be released this year, if not 2. So I'd love to do that.
Wicked. So for anybody, like I said, that wants to know more about you or reach out to you, below on this episode will be your social media handles and things like that, so they can reach out directly. So yeah, thank you for coming on, and I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Angie.
Thank you.